Hello, I'm Lauren, and we are trucking along with my series within a series, the greater series being WordPress 7.0 full site editing, and we're at the part where we need to create a custom plugin. In the last video, we were struggling through the main plugin file. We've gotten past that, starting to create some of the included files for creating the actual form block. This is not going as good as I would like, but I do feel like it's going to get better. So we're just going to suffer through this next 30 minutes, and I've got a whole other video to add on to this. I've been working on this pretty much all day long and feel like I've not made a ton of progress, but the end result I think is going to be, it's going to be worth the time, it's going to be worth the pain. What I'm dealing with right now is, number one, I'm not effectively or efficiently using the continue extension. I'm using it like a child. Number two, I'm working with a local agent, and we can assume that most of the training has involved a more modern Gutenberg block development process, which means Node and React, which we're not using. We're using just PHP and JavaScript. I know it's possible because I've built a custom block with just PHP and JavaScript before. For the most part, it simplifies things in the development process, but finding good, helpful content for this process really is the challenge. It's just not, we're not doing it the most popular way. We're doing it the most efficient way for me. So if I were to take this plugin, let's say we build it all out and we're able to get it, just PHP, just JavaScript, no React, no Node. I can take this plugin, duplicate it, modify it, and use it for something else easily. There's no local development required in this. That's specifically why I'm doing it this way. So a good example of a situation where this would be beneficial is, let's say you're working on a team where you don't have local admin rights, so you can't set up a PHP server on your machine. All you can do is just write code and then put it on a staging site. I know these situations exist because I've been in them before. That's how I know that this is completely possible. So the friction that I'm experiencing is just going against the grain, because in real professional development environments, you do have the local PHP server. You can spin up a node environment. You can use WP-CLI. You can use React to get the job done. And the result of that method is definitely more technically complex. It's a better polished product, but it's more difficult to hand over to a junior or a mid-level developer and say, okay, I need you to make some modifications. It really puts a lot of obstacles between them and doing something as simple as adding another field to a form. So that's why I'm doing it this way. And using the local agent, I mean, it's debatable whether this is a good idea or not. Am I really saving my data from the cloud? No, not really, because in order to put the whole specification sheet together, I use Google Gemini. I use it for a lot of strategy on this, so it pretty much knows what I'm doing. I'm not really saving anything from the cloud. It's definitely up there. They definitely got my data, but I think it's worthwhile to learn how to use the local agent. It is definitely like the slow way to go, but I'm also brand new at this. I've never done this before, so it can only get better. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and and kick off the second segment of a super painful process that it's definitely going to get better as we progress. Okay, we're going to copy this, go back to the chat. The main plugin file is looking good. Let's make the next step to include the logic for the handle registration callback function. We can start with the minimum logic required. Okay, we have our response. Very lengthy, but this provides some pretty good explanations. So if you're used to using GitHub Copilot, this is going to feel incredibly slow. But if you're trying to learn, if you're using this as like a learning experiment, then this should be pretty helpful, because we're gonna learn about everything required to set up this handle registration function. To implement the handle registration function for your WordPress plugin, follow these structured steps. Each step addresses a specific aspect of processing registration requests securely and efficiently. Verify the nonce. Ensure that the request includes a valid WordPress nonce to prevent CSRF attacks. Cross-site request forgery. Retrieve reCAPTCHA token. Extract the Google reCAPTCHA token from the request data. Validate reCAPTCHA. Integrate Google's reCAPTCHA v3 to validate user responses. And it gives us some comments in here. I am going to add this, but I'm not going to put my private key in here, so I'll probably just comment this part out because I know that my secret key is defined in the WP config. Prepare the data for reCAPTCHA verification, secret key, response, remote IP. Make the API request to verify the response. Here's where we're calling Google reCAPTCHA. Here we have the error handling. Handle API request errors. CAPTCHA response is missing or secret key not defined. We get an error. Sanitize and validate inputs. Sanitize each input field according to their requirements. So we have zip code validation, registration type validation. If there are errors, return them. Check email uniqueness. This is where we're going to look at the table to see if that email already exists. If it does exist, we're going to return an error. Insert data into database. Insert the sanitized data into the custom table. Prepare the registration data for insertion. Here's our registration data. So this is everything that's on the form: name, email, zip code, registration type, and then the date that it's created. Here's our insert statement with the table name and the data. And then this %s is a string variable. And then return a success message. Handle errors and responses. Make sure to handle all potential errors at each step, returning appropriate JSON responses with error message and status codes. Complete code implementation. So this is everything. wpdb insert, we just went over this. This looks like a duplicate. Oh, okay. I just got to scroll up. Complete code implementation. So this is everything that we just went through here, all combined into one. So if I click on apply, it should show up right here. It's not, so we're going to copy this. public static function handle registration. So we're going to replace this whole piece right here. Looks like we've got some indentation problem. Got some errors, but we'll get to that. Okay, this first block looks good with no errors. Got a little syntax issue there. WP error. Does that look right? Okay, that's the first function. Okay, the next one would be get metrics. I feel like this one should be pretty simple because we're just going to query that table to see how many registrations we have. Let's move on to the next function definition for get metrics. We need to fill in this code block. Can you add the logic for get metrics? Okay, we have our response thought for 82.6 seconds. It's not too bad. We can just look through this real quick. Global wpdb, because we're going to talk to the database. Query the database for all the registrations. Select count total registrations from WNM registrations. Extract total registrations from the query result. Count unique emails by selecting distinct email addresses. Extract unique emails count. Calculate percentage readiness with a goal of 20 signups. Cap at 100%. Prepare the response data. Return the metrics in JSON format with the 200 status code. Log any errors for debugging purposes. Return a 500 status code with an error message. Let's see if we can apply this code. And now I'm wondering when I clicked apply on the other one if it stuck it somewhere else. Yeah, still struggling to do that. So let's insert code. Apply. What's the difference between apply and insert? Let's see if insert works. I don't like that. Let's just copy this and then we'll paste in over this. Got another indentation problem, so we'll fix this. Let me start at the top. Global wpdb. Tab that over. Looks good. We'll just scan through here to make sure that other one didn't get added in a weird place. This looks good. Okay. All right, let's read through the step-by-step explanation for get metrics. Database connection. The function begins by establishing a connection to the WordPress database using wpdb. Query execution. It executes two SQL queries. Total registrations query counts all entries in WP WNM registrations. Unique emails query counts distinct email addresses, ensuring no duplicates. Data extraction. The results from the database are extracted and converted to integers for further calculations. Percentage calculation. The percentage readiness is calculated based on the total registrations relative to a goal of 20 signups and ensures that the percentage does not exceed 100%. Response preparation. The metrics data is formatted into an array which will be converted to JSON for the API response. Error handling. If any exceptions occur during database operations, they are caught, logged, and a proper error response is returned. Return response. A successful response with the metrics data is returned using REST ensure response. Ensuring it adheres to RESTful standards. This implementation provides a secure, efficient, and scalable way to retrieve registration metrics for your WordPress plugins REST API endpoint. Okay, so let's save this. And we want to work on the actual form next, although I feel like there are going to be other files besides just block.php, but I could be wrong about that. Let's move to the registration form block.php file creation. Can you provide the logic for block.php in the registration form directory for creating the Gutenberg block we will use to add the form to a page. So far, I think this is going better than I expected. There is a part of me that wants to shut down this chat and then switch over to GitHub Copilot because I know it would just go so much faster, but that defeats the purpose of the video. So we're going to stay away from Copilot, stick with the local DeepSeek R1, and see how far we can get. At this point, I'm not ready to zip up the plugin file and add it to the staging environment. I don't think it would be good. I think we'd probably get some errors. It might be a better idea to just spin up a local WordPress instance and add the plugin there. But I feel like that's a little more work than what I want to do for this. So we're going to stick with the plan of using local DeepSeek chat to generate the code. And then once we get to a good stopping point, we will zip up the file, upload it to the staging environment. See what shakes out. We should be able to use phpMyAdmin to at least verify that the table was created, the custom table. Already I can see this is not good. The block file is not going to need this file header. Let's do this a different way. So we're going to go back to this. Let's move on to the plugin bootstrap section. I have created empty PHP files for the registration form and network maturity. Let's focus on the registration form block.php file. This is the logic that creates the custom block that we will add to the page in, we'll say, via WordPress editor. Referring to this function definition in the main plugin file. Let's write the logic for the block.php file in registration form directory. Let's see if that's any better. Alright, this is a good start, but we're going to need to make some modifications. See how these are defined in PHP? Full name, email, zip code, registration type. That is not what we wanted. We wanted to use a JSON config for this. Let's copy this. This template looks okay, but we're definitely missing some things. Let's see what it says. To create a custom Gutenberg block in WordPress using PHP, you need to define the block's attributes, register it with WordPress, and specify how it appears in both the editor and on the front end. Below is an example of how you can achieve this for your registration form block. Define block attributes. The block should have attributes to store the form data: full name, email, zip code, registration type. Use register block to define the block's properties and attributes. Specify the block's title, description, and attributes. Define how the block looks in the editor using edit function. Include form fields for each attribute so users can input data. Define how the block is rendered on the front end using the save function. Output the form HTML with the stored attributes. If you want to handle form submissions within the block, include JavaScript to send data to your REST API endpoint. The register registration form block function defines the block's attributes and registers it with WordPress using register block. Edit function. This function outputs the form fields in the editor, allowing users to input data for each attribute. Save function. This function generates the HTML output of the form as it will appear on the front end using the stored attributes. By following this structure, you can create a custom Gutenberg block that displays a registration form with the specified fields. You can then use this block in your WordPress pages or posts to collect user registrations. So now I'm worried that the specs we wrote up might be a little too complex. So let's do this. We're going to take this section number 4 and hold on to this. So I'm going to copy this and then remind the agent of what we're trying to accomplish. Okay. But we want to use, this looks like a good start, but we want to use a JSON config and form presets. So we may need a few more files to accomplish this. Let's review the block specs for the form. Well, I don't need the second block. I don't need this part. We'll just keep it very simple. Take this. So this looks correct. We got that part. Block must render its HTML form dynamically using a JSON layout array stored inside the block's core attribute schema. Okay, so I don't think we need an extra JSON file, but we do need this definition, and this is not what we have. Execution engine, the block's.php render callback must loop through this active attribute array. It will generate the semantic HTML inputs programmatically based on the visible switches. If a field is set to visible false, the engine omits the input container entirely, ensuring a single dynamic template asset. All right, let's try this. This looks like a good start, but we want to use a JSON config and form presets, so we may need a few more files to accomplish this. Let's review the block specs for the form. Can you use these specs to provide the logic for the custom registration form block.php? All right, let's see if this is any different. WP block, WP post, WP scripts, register, registration form block, form schema, attributes, all right, now I'm seeing the properties that I expect. Required true, visible true. Okay, that's a good sign. Sanitize form schema, WNM registration form edit. This sounds like we're going to put the controls as to whether a field is visible or not within the block itself, which would make sense. Alright, this is getting a little better, but it's still not quite there. So let's add some helpful hints. This is looking better, but I think we can refine this a little more. let's separate the custom form block implementation into 3 files: block.json, index.js, and render.php. For block.json, define the block metadata and dynamic JSON schema register the default JSON layout preset under the attributes key. For index.js, keep this as a 0 build editor wrapper. Use native WP blocks register block type and standard inputs to display the form fields in the admin dashboard. For render.php, execute the JSON dynamic form loop inside render.php. The front end display logic belongs entirely in the PHP render file. Pull the block attributes array and parse the structure. So we're going to need one JSON file and a JavaScript file. Inside registration form, we need index.js. And then we also need block.json. And we want to call this render.php. And for this, we're going to get rid of that for now. Okay, I'd like to think that that is the most painful section of this whole thing. I know that the next video we actually make a breakthrough and get past some of the confusion between the type of block we want to build and the type of block the agent thinks we're trying to build. We come into alignment in the next video, it's going to be better. So if you've watched all of this, that's amazing. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you in the next one.